Mutine, adjective, used to describe an individual whose spirit is unyielding, unconstrained, one who navigates life on their own terms, effortlessly. They do not always show up on time, but when they arrive, you notice an individual confident in their contradictions. They know the rules but behave as if they do not exist. Mutine, the new fragrance by Miu Miu, defined by you.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the History of World War II podcast, episode 565, The French Saved the Allies. Last time, the Germans struck back, mauling Blade Force and advancing to the Jadea Gap to the west of town, which had to be abandoned. Worse, the French no longer controlled any part of Tunisia, as General Ernst Gauss, Rommel's former chief of staff, had flown in and took over. Lastly, General Nering was out, replaced by the efficient but cruel Colonel General Jürgen von Arnim, hardened by the fighting on the Eastern Front. Meanwhile, the Allied General Anderson had his own plans to renew the fighting on December 9th, but now he would be starting 2 steps back. As for General Fleischer, the commander of the 10th Panzer Division, his orders were to keep going and pass through the Jadea Gap to retake Medjez, so would attack along the road that was north of several ridges, though there was another road that was south of these that also led to Medjez. That was currently being blocked by the French. After Brigadier Cass's 11th Brigade retreated from Terboba proper and reorganized, it was now responsible for protecting the gap, while General Lunsford Oliver, using a part of his Combat Command B, would defend the Jebel el Gessa, a ridge that was just below the gap, so in between the north and southern roads, but closer to the northern route. General Fleischer had decided not to force his way through the gap after all. It had limited territory to deploy his armor. No, he would take the southern route, as Armin had not told him how to take Medjez, but just to take it. But first, Fleischer needed to clear the Americans from the ridge Jebel el Gessa, as they would be able to hit his flank or attack him in the rear to the south of them with artillery, if not actual tanks. Also, the ridge right behind, or to the southwest of El Gessa, the Jebel Boy Alkaz, had to be cleared of Americans as well, for the same reason, and it was being manned by another part of Oliver's Combat Command unit. And things started off very well for Fleischer as he attacked the American forces on El Gessa. First, he had the enemy endure dive bombing attacks, and then sent his forces to either end of the ridge. What should have been a turkey shoot for the American artillery on the heights turned out to be a lesson in anti-tank warfare delivered by Fleischer's men. That morning of December 6th, after the dive bombers finished, the U.S. units on El Gessa were hit from the north and south, and they fell apart quickly. Seeing this, General Oliver reinforced Jebel Boy Alkaz, the second ridge, with 2 understrength tank battalions, one of medium and one of light tanks, as it had to be the next target on the Germans' list. But when the Germans came, the American artillery and tanks did not work well together here either. The 1st U.S. Armored Division's history describes the shock the Americans suffered that morning. Those who watched the battle saw an appalling defeat instead of a triumph for which they had hoped. Cook's column attacked using 3 separate approaches on the rocky area just north of Jebel Boy Alkaz. Most of the M3s and all of the Shermans were hit and burning in about 15 minutes. The enemy anti-tank guns had a field day. The day's lessons were deeply disturbing. The enemy's armament and tactics had been extremely effective. American armament and tactics had failed. The weather was also turning as the rainy season began. The Allies were losing time. But this fight wasn't supposed to have happened in the first place, as in, it wasn't a part of the Allied plan. The Allies were shipping in men and material regularly, but they had to get into place. The first had arrived in Algerian ports on November 22nd, that is, logistical and Air Force units. The second landing took place on December 1st, which brought the 78th British Division, much of the 6th British Armored Division, and Lieutenant Charles Alfrey's 5th British Corps headquarters. Alfrey would be taking command for the December 9th attack, and right away after landing, he wanted the advance to wait until the third group could get into place, which would arrive in mid-December. Also, he wanted to pull back to the west of Medjez, abandoning it, but the French howled in protest, so this was not allowed. Eisenhower had to get involved and decided on a compromise. They would pull back to Jebel el Armara to the northeast of Medjez, which is just north on the northern road at the west end of the Jadida Gap, but they would keep Medjez. Lastly, Ike decided that December 24th would be the new start date for their offensive, but clearly the Germans had beat them to the punch. Alfrey's limited pullback towards Jebel el Amara, or the Long Stop as it would become known as, was supposed to have taken place during the night of December 10th, but again, the Germans. For all that had happened, the French would remain covering the Medjez Bridge, which is 3 miles due east of Medjez along the southern road. This was deemed adequate for now. But the Germans had attacked on December 6th, and the rains came on the 7th, turning the valley's sand into a yellowish-gray mud that made movement by trucks or tanks all but impossible. So when Fleischer started the second part of his attack on December 10th, that just happened to be the day that the Combat Command B was to start pulling back, as best they could. Now, the men at Jebel Boy Alkaz had to stay and fight they did. Fleischer's Panzer Grenadiers came at them, but the American 6th Armored Infantry held them back. Worse for Fleischer, as his 7th Panzer Regiment took the southern road to Medjez, they were stopped before the bridge by a French artillery battery. The area was open, giving the French guns visible targets from far away, and with this victory, the Allied tip of the spear was saved from being cut off. But, not giving up, Fleischer ordered the tanks off the road to launch a surprise attack at an unexpected axis, but they were quickly bogged down. Other vehicles were brought up to pull the panzers out, which was working, but it was slow, grueling work. General Oliver got a report of this and decided to hit the enemy mid-retreat. Sending in a force of light tanks and tank destroyers, they went after the 7th Panzer Regiment, but they were brutally reminded that they were not the equal of the 7th. Taking German hits, now the light tanks went off the road themselves and became stuck. German artillery did the rest. 19 stewards and most of the tank destroyers were wrecked. The crews that survived waited until darkness and then ran for the Jebel Dau Aukaz Ridge, the second ridge behind El Gessa. But the hell of inexperience and panic was not over.
So good, so good, so good.
New fall arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Vince, Kurt Geiger London, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club at Nordstrom Rack to unlock exclusive discounts on your favorite brands. Shop new arrivals first and more. Plus, get an extra 5% off every Rack purchase with a Nordstrom credit card. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
Swallowing his pride, General Oliver ordered that the pullback was to happen in one night instead of the original 2. So the men and vehicles on Jebel Bau Aukaz would head east, They would cross the Medjerda River, running south along the northern route at the Borgetown Bridge, and use the northern road to complete their retreat. Getting close to the bridge, Oliver, wanting no more screw-ups, ordered a light tank force to speed ahead and check the bridge to make sure it was being held by British forces. But when the tanks got there, no British troops were there. No one was. But not wanting to take a chance, this easily could be a trap, the bridge was not crossed, and the men and the vehicles went west along the river. But soon they ran into unexpected and unplanned for German outposts. Both sides started shelling each other, while the column commander of the Allies decided what to do next. Then a rumor went around that the bridge was being held by the Germans, so to cross it was to die. Clearly, that meant enemy troops were also to their north, so the column commander, without even trying to verify the rumor, turned his column south along a path, directly south or away from the Medjerda River, itself again just south of the North Road. The division's history tells what happened next. This error of judgment prevailed over all advice against it. Soon scores of vehicles, which had been brought thousands of miles to Africa and across northwest Africa to Tunisia from Oran, were digging their own graves. As they bogged down and wore themselves out, the order was issued to abandon them and to walk to Medjez. Still, ever the optimists, after this retreat, the rain stopped for a few days, so the Allies planned to renew their offensive at Christmas. General Alfray would use the southern or main Tunis road to make his attack this time, using the 6th British Armored and the 78th British Divisions. But he could not leave the northern route open to the enemy. At the very least, the hills of Jebel el Amura, a.k.a. the Long Stop. Again, the ridge to the northeast of Medjez and at the western end of the gap. For if the Germans controlled that, they could use their artillery to shell the British tanks as it traveled along the flat, open southern road. So the plan was to use the 2nd Battalion of the Coldstream Guards to take the height during the night of December 22nd and then hand it over that same night to the 18th Regimental Combat Team of Allen's 1st U.S. Division, which was just making landfall. As the Coldstream Guards approached the Long Stop height, heavy rains started up again. Still, the rains helped. The Guards approached the bridge unseen until it was too late. The Germans were chased away, now to just wait for the Americans. But then for them came one delay after another. The night was getting on, and the Guards were supposed to be somewhere else by a certain time. Before the sun rose on December 23rd, the Guards had no choice but to leave the height, just when the first American troops were coming within sight. Besides, all the German forces were gone from the Long Stop. Right? Which was not the case. So when the sun rose, the Guards gone, and the Americans still getting into place, those on the height were attacked by the remaining German forces and driven off of the ridge. This forced the 2nd Coldstream to return that night of the 23rd and again push the Germans away. But this time, they did a more thorough job of searching the height, which is when they found that they were not on the ridge's highest peak. At its northeastern end, there is a dip, and after that dip, it rises again, and that is the Jebel Ra, and there, a German unit was well dug in.
I'm Scott Hansen, host of NFL Red Zone. Lowe's knows Sundays hit different when you earn them. We've got you covered with outdoor power equipment from Cobalt and everything you need to weatherproof your deck with Trex decking. Plus, with lawn care from Scott's and, of course, Pit Boss grills and accessories, you can get a home field advantage all season long. So get to Lowe's, get it done, and earn your Sunday. Lowe's, official partner of the NFL.
Nothing for it. On December 24th, in the evening, the Guards attacked there and took the height, but they could not hold it from German counterattacks. Christmas morning saw the Germans retake Jebel Ra and then retake most of the Long Stop. Celebrating this local victory, the Germans took to calling what the Americans called the long stop Christmas Hill. Spoiler, the Germans would hold this height until the end of the North African campaign. During this back and forth for the long stop / Christmas Hill, Ike came to Tunisia himself. He wanted to see firsthand what his officers were complaining about with all this rain. During one tour on the road, Ike witnessed something that changed the battle for Tunis for the immediate future. As he put it, I observed an incident which I think convinced me of the hopelessness of an attack. In a field that appeared to be covered with winter wheat, a motorcycle had become stuck in the mud. 4 soldiers were struggling to extricate it, but in spite of their most strenuous efforts, succeeded in only getting themselves mired in the sticky clay. We went back to headquarters, and I directed the attack to be indefinitely postponed. It was a bitter decision. Next, Eisenhower messaged the combined chiefs of staff that same December 24th, no hope of immediate attack on Tunis. Am attempting to organize and maintain a force to operate aggressively on the southern flank. While the Allies were limited by the weather, the Axis forces, General Armand's and Rommel's, were equally hampered, but by a different force. First, General Armand may have had a temporary upper hand in dealing with the Americans and the British, but they were still bringing in reinforcements, and they were well equipped. That they had not figured out how to best use their weapons would be rectified in time. As for Rommel in Libya, he was still falling back before a force that knew how to use those very same weapons very effectively. Back on November 24th, near El Algila, to the left or west of the Cyrenaican Bulge, in the Gulf of Sidra, and in mid-Libya, the Axis commanders were talking over strategy. Rommel was in no mood to play, so said he did not have enough of anything, especially men, and his German forces amounted at best to a weak division, whereas the 3 Italian divisions with him were more of a hindrance than a help. Further, that this area had to be abandoned and his army had to travel north to link up with the forces in Tunisia. Together, they would be strong enough to maul the British and American forces there, and then they could turn south and do the same to Monty's 8th Army. But Kesselring and the Italian Chief of Staff, Cavaliero, said no, that Mursa Brega, at the very least, had to be held. No more withdrawals. To wit, Rommel pulled a Rommel. He flew to Germany to get approval for the retreat from Hitler. But Der Fuhrer was obsessed, and not in a good way, with General von Paulus and his 6th Army situation in Stalingrad. For all the destruction they were causing, the Russians would not surrender or go away. They just kept coming. So it was to this most distracted leader that Rommel put his case. He ended with, since experience indicated that no improvement in the shipping situation could be expected, the abandonment of the African theater of war should be accepted as long-term policy, and that's as far as he got. It was then that the Fuhrer flew into a rage. He said that it was a political necessity to hold a major bridgehead in Africa, and there would, therefore, be no withdrawal from the Mursa Brega line. He would do everything possible to get supplies to me. And just like that, looking around, Rommel no longer had allies. Not Hitler, not Kesselring, not Cavaliero, not even Mussolini, who preferred having Tunisia to Libya. As for Rommel's main tormentor, Monty, he was unsatisfied with the events after the Second Battle of El Alamein as well. He was unhappy with how things had been operationally, not being able to bring Rommel to battle enough to destroy him. But he had to admit that logistically, 8th Army's achievement was one for the history books. Egypt and the Suez Canal were more than safe. Rommel was being whittled down, and now, thanks to Operation Torch, Rommel could only retreat so far. No, for Monty, his main concern was to not snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Rommel was still Rommel. To make a mistake in front of him was a recipe for disaster. And Monty was determined not to ruin his advance at Mersa Brega as Generals Neame and Ritchie had done after their local victories. No, again, Monty would not strike until he was ready. Back to Rommel, hearing the word no officially, he withdrew into Mersa Brega on November 23rd and put as many mines in front of his position as he could. Seeing this, Monty and his staff decided that December 15th would be their attack date. A diversionary frontal attack would be launched, while General Freyberg's 2 divisions of New Zealanders would sweep around the southern end of Rommel's line and then come back up north. Of course, this meant they had to travel just over 200 miles just to be safe, but such a move was becoming all but common in desert warfare. Of course, Rommel's reconnaissance flights saw what the New Zealanders were setting up to do. The question was how to respond. Greetings, everyone, from Central Virginia. So we're starting to see the merging of Rommel's and Armand's forces. The Americans are just still learning how the finely tuned finesse, the dance, if you will, between artillery, tanks, and infantry, how to support them, and no crap to the Americans. It took the British a while to finally figure this out. The Germans figured it out first, obviously, then the British figured out, and now the Americans are playing catch up. So it's a very delicate thing to do, and it takes a lot of practice with communication and coordination. So the Americans will get there, but this is the learning curve, right? So anyways, I would like to say welcome aboard and hello to a couple of people. Let's see here. John McBain from California. He became a member and he donated, which makes John my new best friend. Thank you very much, John. I appreciate it. Let's see here. Matthew Turner from Australia also became What did I just say? Became a member. Thank you very much, Matthew. And George Shea from Michigan. So thank you, George. As far as donations, let's see here. This was sweet. This touched my heart, if I have one. Les Morcillo made a donation for his daughter, Sylvia, because she listens to the podcast. Thank you very much, Les and Sylvia. Let's see here. Jordan Pollock. Thank you for the donation. Me too. I am looking forward to VJ Day because then maybe I can retire. I don't know. I'm getting old. This is getting embarrassing. The podcast is longer than the war. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to that as well. And again, I can't remember if I said his name, but I would just like once more to say thank you to Cohen White for his donation. It means a lot to me. My daughters have already spent it, but the effort was appreciated. Thank you, Cohen. So we'll see you next week. We'll keep this going. The rains have come. It makes everything a pain in the ass. You can only do so much. So we'll see how Eisenhower is going to try to placate the combined chiefs of staff during a period when it seems that very little can be done. Take care, everyone.
From the creators of the popular science show with millions of YouTube subscribers comes the Minute Earth podcast. Every episode of the show dives deep into a science question you might not even know you had. But once you hear the answer, you'll want to share it with everyone you know. Why do rivers curve? Why did the T-Rex have such tiny arms? And why do so many more kids need glasses now than they used to? Spoiler alert, it isn't screen time. Our team of scientists digs into the research and breaks it down into a short, entertaining explanation, jam-packed with science facts and terrible puns. Subscribe to Minute Earth wherever you like to listen.
Welcome to True Spies, the podcast that takes you deep inside the greatest secret missions of all time.
Suddenly out of the darkness appeared Bin Laden.
You'll meet the people who live life undercover. What do they know? What are their skills? And what would you do in their position?
Vengeance felt good. Seeing these people pay for what they'd done felt righteous.
True Spies from Spyscape Studios, wherever you get your podcasts.